Imagine this: a secret Cold War mission, a Himalayan peak above 7,800 meters, a blizzard that forces a retreat, and a device containing plutonium left behind in the ice. Not a rumor, not a creepypasta. In 1965, the CIA and India's Intelligence Bureau attempted something almost unbelievable. They tried to place a nuclear-powered surveillance device on Nanda Devi, one of India's highest mountains. But the mission failed, and the device was never recovered. This is the story of the Nanda Devi nuclear spy mission, one of the most redacted incidents in Cold War history. This took place in the Garhwal Himalayas, in what is now Uttarakhand, India. The operation was planned and executed around October 1965 during the peak Cold War era. The goal was not science and not exploration, it was surveillance. Because the CIA believed that the mountain's extreme height and position could give them access to intelligence they couldn't get any other way. To understand why this happened, you need one word: China. During 1960s, China was building and testing nuclear weapons, including at the Lob Noor test site in Xinjiang. The CIA and US intelligence wanted to monitor missile and nuclear activity, and from India's side, this wasn't just a global conflict issue, it was local. India and China had gone through massive tension after the 1962 war. So the CIA and India's Intelligence Bureau cooperated in secret to monitor Chinese activity, using the Himalayas as a listening post. And here's the part that shocks people. The equipment wasn't a bomb, it was a surveillance station powered by SNAP-19C plutonium generator, an RTG, or radioisotope thermoelectric generator. The planned station included a tall antenna described around 8 to 10 feet, transceivers, and a plutonium-powered power source. The generator had plutonium capsules inside, used to produce heat which gets converted into electricity. So basically, it was a nuclear battery for a spy station. In October 1965, the CIA and India's Intelligence Bureau began the climb. They established camps and moved the equipment up the mountain. This wasn't a normal mountaineering expedition, because they weren't just carrying ropes and oxygen. They were carrying sensitive electronics, surveillance hardware, and a plutonium power unit. They reached high-altitude camps and attempted to approach the summit zone. But the weather turned deadly. A violent storm, described as a blizzard, hit the mountain, and the team made the decision to abort. According to documented accounts, they abandoned the device, reportedly anchoring it in a crevice and securing it, hoping they could recover it later. But this is where the mystery begins, because when they came back later, the device was gone. A follow-up recovery expedition in 1966 searched for the generator and the plutonium capsules, but they found no clear trace of it. Some teams reportedly used detection methods to search for radiation signs, yet they still came up empty. So what happened? Many suggest some possibilities, such as a landslide or an avalanche, or the device sliding into a glacier crevice, or being buried so deep that it became unrecoverable. And if you know anything about glaciers, they don't just hide things, they store them for decades. The fear wasn't a nuclear explosion, it was contamination. Because Nanda Devi is close to glacial systems that feed into major river networks, and multiple reports describe fears about radioactive contamination reaching downstream waters, including the Ganges region. Even if the risk was low, the psychological impact was massive. A nuclear-powered device lost in snow and ice, above river sources in one of the most environmentally sensitive regions on Earth, that is a Cold War nightmare scenario. Here's the twist most people don't know. After failing at Nanda Devi, the CIA didn't fully quit. Instead, they shifted efforts to a nearby peak, Nanda Kot. A similar device was installed in around 1967 and later recovered. Efforts occurred around 1968 where the generator's heat had melted snow around it, creating a cavity. This detail matters because it proves something. These RTG-powered systems weren't a one-off crazy idea. They were part of a real intelligence strategy. For years, the public didn't know. Then the story broke into wider attention around 1978 when it was reported in Western media and raised in political discussions. India's Prime Minister Morarji Desai later addressed it publicly, and India formed scientific discussions around the environmental risks and monitoring. So by the late 1970s, the world learned something shocking. A nuclear-powered CIA device was lost on a Himalayan mountain, and nobody could guarantee it was recovered. The question always returns, and recently the topic has resurfaced again in public discussion. Is it still dangerous today? Now, the answer was provided in early January 26 by former Atomic Energy Commission Chairman Anil Kakodkar, stating that there is no radiation risk today from the device lost in 1965, pushing back against public fears of contamination. So on one side you have public fear and what-if scenarios. On the other, you have experts claiming modern risk is low or negligible. But whether it's dangerous or not, the historical reality doesn't change. It was lost. If we say strict and evidence-based, the most realistic conclusion is the device was most likely swept by avalanche or landslide and was most probably buried in glacier ice. But this is because once buried under massive ice and snow, recovery becomes harder with every year that passes. That's why multiple recovery attempts across 1966 to 1968 were described as unsuccessful. Because in the Himalayas, lost can become permanent fast. So what's the horror of the Nanda Devi story? Not aliens, not secret monsters. Just one terrifying fact. A nuclear-powered device from a covert mission was abandoned in a blizzard in October 1965, and it was never recovered. And somewhere in the ice of the Himalayas, that Cold War secret became part of the mountain itself. Not destroyed, not solved, just buried like a classified file sealed by nature.